Welcome to the StoryADay podcast. This is Julie Duffy, encouraging you to be a writer today, not someday. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's Julie from the StoryADay podcast here, coming to you from partway through September, and we're coming up to the end of the second week of StoryADay September. If you have been writing already, good for you. Don't give up. I know it's getting difficult, but if you just keep going, it will start to get easier again. She says, hopefully, not promising anything. But if you have not yet joined us, it is not too late to jump in. So I wanted to talk today a little bit about some of the things that have been going on at StoryADay, some of the prompts that we've had this month, and some of the prompts that are coming up. And let me explain why I want to talk about this. It's not just, to tell you that StoryADay is great and you should jump in, although I think that's true. But I find that when you hear how other people are using the challenge, it can be a really inspiring thing. When you hear about what some of the other people have been using the prompts for, it can spark ideas. So I highly recommend that you go over to storyaday.org and just have a look at the comments for any day during September and see how people have been taking these ideas, which have been given to us by award-winning and best-selling authors and people who've been doing the challenge for 10 years. And, all these people who are writing a lot have given us these prompts this month. And then you can look at the comments from people who are just starting out, people who've been doing this for a while, and just see how when you come back every day, you get more and more creative ideas. And there's a whole bunch of comments from people saying things like, I didn't think I was going to get anything from this prompt today. And then I sat down and I got this story that I'm really happy with. So that's kind of inspiring, and it will make you want to make time for your writing too. And knowing that you're part of something bigger than yourself and that other people are doing this too can just be really reassuring. So, what have we been looking at this week on StoryADay? In the past week, we've had prompts from Julia Elliott, who is a short story writer whose stories have been collected in the Best American Short Story Collection, among other things. And she gave us a really interesting genre mix prompt, which caused some hilarity because some of the genres that she mentioned were ones that people either, hadn't heard of. There were very, very specific niche ones. And then there were some that were just fun to put together. So some people ended up writing dystopian romance, which is an interesting challenge, let's say. Someone else wrote a detective travelogue. So a detective who was sort of making up stories about the things that they had investigated in different places and writing it as a travelogue. We had someone else who decided to put fairy stories together with psychological thrillers and chose Rumpelstiltskin, which I can definitely see as a psychological thriller. Then somebody else sort of spun the mental wheel and ended up with gothic and mockumentary. And so they were going to write Frankenstein meets The Office, which I would definitely read. So there's just some of the ideas that came up this past week for that one prompt. Another day we had an illustration from the lovely and talented Debbie Ridpath-Ohi, who actually has a new book that she's illustrated, a children's book that she's illustrated, which came out this month. And it's called Gerpel and Preen, and it's about a green and a purple crayon who go on adventures. And so her illustrations came out of just some doodling that she was doing, and she worked on it for a while. And now she has this whole series of broken crayon art, where she breaks a crayon and then draws a crayon doodle. And the tagline is, "You never know what's going to come out of a broken crayon." So she gave us one of the broken crayon illustrations to use as a writing prompt, but there's a whole gallery of other ones at her site, and you can find a link to that on that day's prompt. But we got some really cute stories. A lot of people went with a sort of children's story feel for that, which makes sense. There were a lot of little monsters, little purple monsters coming out of that crayon and having adventures. So that's a kind of a fun one. One of our Story a Day participants, Marta Pellerine Bacon, who's also a fabulous artist, gave us a prompt which starts from a very sort of practical place where you look around the room that you're in and start your story with an object. So that one came up with quite a lot of different things. They were people starting with an object like, a candlestick or a sock, and then going in really unexpected directions from there. And sometimes the challenge of that really drove them to be so much more creative than they thought they were going to be. So sometimes these limits that these prompts give you are the thing which challenge you to be more creative, and that you can end up coming up with something really effective. Who else did we have? Today we have a prompt from Wendy Lynn Harris, who wrote the Writing and Selling Short Stories and Personal Essays book from Writer's Digest Books. And she gave us a great prompt about writing list stories. And you can actually watch her. You can listen to her on a previous episode of the podcast where she talks, we geek out about flash fiction. I think that was in April of this year, towards the end of April of 2020. So I'll put the notes for that in the podcast notes, and you can go back and listen to that one in case you're having any problems structuring your short stories. That was a fun chat that we had where Wendy Lynn gave us tons of great ideas about how to make flash fiction work during this challenge. Tomorrow we will have a prompt from Gabriela Pereira, who is the host and chief instigator at DIY MFA, our friends over there. And she has a great exercise if you're having any problems or having any concerns about your voice and your writer's voice. You can try out some different stuff. She's got this great exercise for us. After that, we have a prompt from Rob Cadigan, who's a novelist and owns a bookstore, which just sounds like the perfect combination of jobs, doesn't it? Then we have a prompt about secrets from Art Taylor, who is a fantastic short story writer and teaches this stuff, at college. So we're getting some great insights from wonderful writing teachers as well as from practicing writers. Speaking of practicing writers, Tobias Buckell has a prompt for us on the 16th, which is about character and conflict. I follow him on Patreon because he was doing a thing where he would send out a new short story to his Patreon's supporters every month. And it's been wonderful watching that happen because, most working writers are writing novels, and that's mostly where you can make your money in the traditional publishing industry. But that doesn't mean that people stop loving short story writing, and he's a great example of that. So he uses his Patreon to justify his short story writing time, and to come up with new to try stuff out, to experiment, and to share stuff with his fans in between times when the novels are coming out, which is a wonderful thing to do with short stories. After that, on the 17th, we have a prompt from another great writing teacher, Gregory Frost, who asks us to write in a very unusual point of view. So normally I don't do this. I don't normally give you a little sneak peek of what's coming in the challenge, but I decided this time to let you have a look behind the scenes because I know that it's difficult at this point in the month, whether you've been writing and have got kind of tired, or whether you've just discovered the challenge and you're like, I don't know, it's the 12th, it's the 13th, it's too late to jump into a monthly challenge. It's not. You've got so much good stuff coming. After Gregory Frost, we have Simon Rich, who wrote the TV show Miracle Workers with Daniel Radcliffe in it. He wrote for SNL. He gave us a prompt all about it's largely about thinking about character and your audience and your reader, which is something I don't talk about that much, so that's an interesting prompt. After that, we have a prompt from multi-award-winning Seanan McGuire, who gives us a science fiction prompt that really twisted people's heads the first time they saw it back in May. After that, we have Premi Mohammed. We have a prompt from Grant Faulkner of NaNoWriMo fame, and Jonathan Maberry, who is a really prolific and down to earth and sort of brilliant writer of horror and mystery and urban fantasy, and he's done graphic novels and TV shows and all kinds of stuff, and he gave us a prompt as well, so we're rounding out the month with that one. So again, I just really want to encourage you to dip in, even if you're not doing the challenge every day. Dip into some of the days that you might have missed. Promise yourself that you will write on Tuesdays or Wednesdays or whatever you're going to do, and then set aside some time. Set a timer and force yourself to start and finish a story all at once. This is the big thing that I preach here, is finishing your stories. Because as I keep saying, it's only really when you get to the end of a story that you know what it is. And I was actually listening to All Songs Considered, the NPR podcast, I guess it's a show, and I listened to it as a podcast form, and they were talking to a songwriter who said the same thing, and he went even further. He said it's not until he has recorded the song and edited it and mastered it and listened to it 1,000 times that he really understands what the song is trying to say and what the song's really about. And this is a singer-songwriter, he's responsible for the whole process, and he feels like even though he's performed it probably hundreds of times by the time it gets to the final recorded version, he doesn't really feel like he knows what the song wants to be or what it's trying to say, even to him, until it's finished to the point where it's actually produced. So don't give up on your stories before you've given them a chance to become what they want to become. Starting a story can be hard. Getting through the middle can be hard. Finishing can be hard. But it's also satisfying, rewarding. It's a journey that you go on. And a lot of us are tempted to give up because we think it's not going to be good. Or it's not good enough. And I could quote all kinds of people for you. You know who I would quote. All the quotes that you've heard talking about the difference between our expectation of the art and the reality of our first draft, and how it feels like a butterfly in the air, and then you pin it to the page and it's all smooshed and ugly. All of these artists who have tried to express that gap between what we would like the story to be and what it is on its first draft and what it is even on the finished, polished version. There's always going to be a gap between perfection and what we turn out. So you have to keep pushing at it. You have to keep finishing. You have to keep writing, because you cannot judge the story until it's done. And we can talk another time about what done means, or finished means, or abandoned means. But one of the ways to get to the end of the story is to use deadlines, is to use challenges, is to use prompts, is to use bribery. And I've built the StoryADay challenge to incorporate all of those things. You get bribery, you get reward, you get accountability, and the potential for public shame if that works for you, or the potential for adulation and accountability if you're more of a glass half full person. You have a deadline. Every day you have to write a story. You have a trigger. By this point in the month, if you've been writing every day, you've probably got a trigger. If you're in the Superstars group, you might be our 8:30 writing sprint. If you are writing by yourself, it might be that you sit down after dinner every night and write your story. So you've got a trigger, you've got the motivation to do it, because you've said you're going to do it. You've got a deadline, you have to get it done by today. And all of that works. Then you have the important part of building a habit, which is the celebration. And if you push yourself to get to the end of a story, there's kind of a little built-in celebration there. There's a built-in high that comes with finishing. I would encourage you to come up with some other kind of celebration. I myself am putting gold stars in my journal every day that I write. And if I don't write, I'm putting little sparkly hearts in my journal, because I feel like, for me, For some people, the idea of not breaking a streak works. For me, I know I'm going to break a streak, but I don't want it to discourage me, so I put a little heart sticker in my journal for self-compassion and forgiveness to remind myself that it's okay, but I'm not allowed to have more than a few hearts in a row, right? But whatever you can do to give yourself a little reward, something immediate that happens immediately after you finish your story, will be incredibly powerful for reinforcing that behavior that you want to build. And that's the whole reason for you doing the challenge, right? Or for writing more, is that you want to be more creative. You want to be able to sit down and write without all the angst. There will still be some angst, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with expressing yourself, and the more comfortable you get with the discomfort of when it's not going well. So if you joined us at the beginning of the month and have fallen away, come on back. The water's fine. If you haven't jumped in yet, trust me, you're going to have fun. You're going to love it. The people who are commenting in the blog comments are very friendly. So stop by every day and get inspired by what other people are writing, and contribute to that pool of inspiration by telling us what you wrote as well. Don't worry about people stealing your ideas. People in this community have a lot of ideas. They don't need to steal yours. And even if they did, if I had assigned, one of the things that shows up every year is that I could assign a very, very specific prompt. I could tell you all to rewrite Red Riding Hood, or I could give you all a list of 10 words that you have to use in your prompt, in your story. And I've done this. And every single story that comes out of it is unique, because you are unique. And the world needs your story. I keep coming back to this. I mean, this year, I think, has shown us the importance of diverse voices. There's a lot of people we've been ignoring. And our experience, our lives are richer when they are full of more experiences, of more beauty and joy and expressions and ways of looking at things and ways of interpreting things. So never let anyone tell you that your version of a story isn't valid. Your version is absolutely valid. We need it. Please write it. And if we can help in any way at StoryADay, let me know. You can email me at julie@storyaday.org. You can come over to the blog at storyaday.org and leave comments. You can find me on Twitter and YouTube and basically, wherever. Instagram, you can find me everywhere. StoryADay May is the handle on Twitter and Instagram. Just, jump in, join the challenge, ask me questions, and write your stories. Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week, and of course, keep writing.